How many hearts, like, you know, the little heart symbols, these guys, do you reckon you've seen today? Take a wild guess, like 20, 50, 100, 500? Well, here's what's crazy, what I've recently learned. Chances are the actual number of how many hearts you've seen today is way higher. What you're looking at right now is hearts that I've asked you to send in. It's dizzying, right? Hearts on walls, logos, skin, bumper stickers, games, albums, double tap messages, births, deaths, marriages, and next to every song on Spotify. It's just a lot of hearts. In some places, the heart means everything, and in others, nothing. This is the story of how one little shape took over the world.
And a huge thanks to Milanote for sponsoring this video. We'll talk about them later. Hidden heart syndrome. How too much of a good thing makes a good thing invisible. And while it's about so much more than just hearts, the story of the heart symbol
Are they super fucked?
tells it the best.
Hello, welcome to my quiet neighborhood. So depending on what culture and what time period you are in history, a heart symbol didn't always mean love. If you saw one in ancient India, you'd think it was the Sylphian plant. You'd be thinking about aphrodisiacs. If you saw it in ancient Japan, you'd be thinking that heart meant the boar's eye, the eye of a wild boar, and you'd be thinking, thank goodness we are warding off evil spirits. That shape, the heart itself, we wouldn't actually see an association with that and romantic love until medieval France.
Very nice.
But here we have a fella, a lady, and he is giving her a pear, actually. You know that thing, like when you like someone, so you give them a pear? Basically, it is the first time we have the shape, albeit not a heart, associated with love. Elephant in the room though, when did it become the heart? Well, about 100 years later, we start seeing religious paintings that have the heart in the actual heart shape, including a whole bunch that still have the aorta in them. It's sort of like the phablet, the missing link between the heart symbol and the heart organ. This is definitely my favorite though. All right, this is all background. It's a whole lot of art history. Things for the heart really get cooking, not with paintings, but with a game. I feel like every time I make stuff, I always try to give it a little twist. So what I'm doing here is I'm literally watching paint dry. And what I'm doing here in a wider context is I'm gonna be painting a playing card because that's sort of the next stop in our story. So fun fact I learned this week, original cards were hand painted. This meant that cards were basically reserved for the ultra wealthy, because who can afford that type of labor? But the printing press, just like it changed everything, changed cards as well. Shout out Johannes Gutenberg. There was one small problem. Cards, super popular in like the 1400s. However, when you're playing games, you kind of have to agree on the suit. Now the Spanish, for example, they had like coins and stuff. Germans, they had like this pill shape and they got like a bauble. That's pretty cool. Meanwhile, the French, in a very un-French move, actually won something for once. So they had the hearts, the clubs, the spades, and the diamonds that we see today. Ultimately, as beautiful as these were, they would get standardized into the classic playing cards that we all know, and the ones that I will be painting here. So you've got these cards which are getting printed, and you've got the hearts, which are the French suit that won. So for a lot of people, this shape, and calling it a heart, this was their first exposure. But more interestingly, their association wasn't necessarily love, but a game. So here we start to sort of like get into murky waters with the meaning, but into great waters with exposure. So in one sense, it's kind of like a messy time for the heart because it wasn't a love heart. But in the other sense, exposure's great. It's kind of like Doja Cat blowing up with I'm a cow. Yeah, she got the views. Is she a cow? I'm a cow. That's not what we know her for now. Now we know her as the mega pop star. But at the time, she was like a meme, right? Same thing. Not really. What I'm holding here is a massive stack of handmade Valentine's Day cards, and each card represents a different era of Valentine's Day, and for us, a different stop on the heart shape's journey. Stop one is the 1790s with our first ever Valentine's Day card. So Valentine's Day was celebrated for a couple hundred years before this, but we never really got the love-heart association until here. Hence, this is like a pretty big puzzle piece for us. Have some love. The next stop on our Valentine's Day journey is when Valentine's Day gets turned into cash by none other than Hallmark. In 1913 was when that company got set up. And not too long after that, they started making cards, love cards with lots and lots of love hearts saying, hey, if you love your special someone, you'll pay for them, right? This is more or less the beginning of the end, but they're kind of cool looking. The 1920s, the roaring 20s really. The 30s, with a pun, I'd like tub be your Valentine. Hilarious. The 40s, for you my sweet old so-and-so, my best boyfriend, my steady beau. Housewife call. 1950s, love is now about war. We got the 60s, 70s. Then we hit something super interesting. So this one is from 1978 and it's got Mayor McCheese from McDonald's on it. Still got a heart, but after we see Alvin and the Chipmunks, Alf and the Ninja Turtles, any connection that Valentine's Day and this love heart had to romantic love, sort of replaced by money. You know what, have all four. They don't mean what they used to, right? Things pretty much keep going like this. 90s gives us The Lion King, Jordan, Pokemon, we hit the thousands with Bratz, and yeah man, Britney. So, if that's what's going on in the realm of love, what's the heart doing when it's not on duty? So, if you thought that Valentine's Day and the commercialization of the heart symbol was bad, wait till you hear about 20th century pop culture. As we talk about this stuff, just keep in mind that not every symbol gets this treatment. Some symbols aren't versatile enough to stand the test of time. Thumbs up on Facebook used to mean something good and now it just feels like divorced dad speak. The ohm, the star, the toilet symbol, they don't seem to wind up in quite as many places as the heart. Yeah. What is this symbol?
Love.
Why? What this piece is kind of like a little documentary about like why the symbol is what it became and why it never actually used to be love and like why it doesn't even look like a heart and the sort of bastardization that's happened in, I guess, the last 100 years. And so that's kind of what we're trying to answer here.
I'm not just saying this for the camera, that's a really cool concept, I love it.
Oh my God, you heard it here first, so watch to the end, baby. So in the 20th century, we start seeing hearts on products, hearts in movies, hearts is like an entire way to sell magazines, hearts with sex, hearts in cartoons, hearts on shoes, hearts in brands, all sorts of places. But one of the big things that changes it is the heart in this phrase here. I love New York. Only it doesn't say I love New York, it says I heart NY. So this is an example of metonymy, which is where you have something that stands for something else. In this case, it's the heart standing for love. But after 1977, basically this love heart became a verb. And this opened up the floodgates. So now we've got toys, we've got more toys, we've got video game lives, and all of this ubiquity leads to irony. The thing that was meant to mean love is now basically a guaranteed way to make people feel good about you. The heart is in so many places that it can mean nothing. Yeah, people know it as love, but they also know it as just that thing that you see everywhere. But at the end of the 20th century, there was one heart that was trying to unify it. I love creativity, but I do need to organize it. And that is where the sponsor of this video comes in. Milanote. So Milanote's this amazing creative organizational tool that I use for both work and my personal life. I'm a list maker, I'm a visual guy. So what you do is you make boards of all your ideas, to-do lists, creative stuff, projects you want to do, projects you are doing, you get the idea. It's like this virtual bulletin board where you put all of this in one place. But not just for you can also share it with your friends. I like to share mine with Aaron, who's holding the camera. Hey, Aaron. If I can brainstorm, I can have them put ideas and like create more strings. So I got this one Milanote board called Inspo. Basically takes certain stuff that inspires me, film, illustration, various artworks, and I chuck them all here. On top of this, if I'm ever feeling uninspired, I can just go straight here and I get that little surge. You know the surge, you all know the surge. Now here's the crazy part, Milanote is available for free and there's no time limit on that free either. So yeah, if you're curious, if you want to use this tool, there's a link in my description. You can check it out. Also, if you do, just because everybody tends to use Milanote differently, I'd be kind of curious how you use it. Check it out. Now back to this story. I'm painting. I'm just getting a little bit of variation in between all my grays. This heart would eventually become the reason that Steve Jobs put emojis on the iPhone and we put emojis in our texts. So this particular heart can be found in almost only one place, and that is on a late 90s pager device called the Pocket Bell Pager, which is pretty much only available in Japan. Teenagers, as teenagers do, found the heart really fun and cool to send to people. So they would send it to, you know, anybody, and it was just like another way to communicate through text, in the same way that we use emojis. But even the developers of the Pocket Bell Pager itself didn't even know what they had done. Like, it was an accident that the heart was on there in the first place. But it was also like, because it was so clunky compared to like a letter, which is quite thin, they're like, that's taking up a bunch of space and no one even uses it. So they take it off the update, right? Surprise to them, because they weren't getting data like people get data now. That heart was actually getting used all the time by teenagers. And there was one particular teenager who really, really loved the heart. His name was Sikataki Karita. When the heart was removed, he sort of took that personally, man. So he would end up becoming an interface designer. I don't know, it's a pretty petty revenge arc, but he had one goal in mind, and that was to put pictures back on phones so he could text better. He eventually would end up not just creating a heart for a new phone, but creating like, I don't know how many, but a lot of symbols, right? And these symbols would go on to be the ancestors of the emojis that we use on our phones. So a petty revenge arc that came from this little 8-bit heart is the reason that we use emojis, basically. Crazy, right? Like, this to me, this story blows my mind. I don't know, so many things are just accidents in history. So now we've reached the digital age, and this is basically where the heart just becomes like a full-on internet influencer. And what I mean by that is it just gets fucking everywhere. So to celebrate that, I've got all of these stickers, and I'm gonna put them fucking everywhere. All right, man. Ow. Yeah, these are really hard to get off, but this is like less than a cent a sticker. I don't need to hit it every time. However, you get the visual metaphor? The heart's everywhere now. Pretty clever. So the pixel heart is now the emoji, and that emoji now has friends like the blue heart. We're getting the heart on MySpace with Pon and Z, if you're old enough to remember that. Shout out my 2006 emos. We get hearts that are going viral in images, sends a bit of a message to anyone who wants a bit of internet fame. We get then the big one, this is a huge piece for us, the heart being the like. Uh-oh, dopamine, dopamine, dopamine. So everyone catches on, we put it in captions, we see it next to every single song on Spotify. TikTok literally just fires them at you, man. And this is basically how the heart is now. Why in some contexts is this thing everything, and why in others is it disposable? So that's the story of how this little organ ended up taking over the world as a shape. And also the story of this video. I started it off with that little question, that game of how many hearts do you reckon you see every day? And I played it. Here's my confession. I guessed about 200, which I thought was like me being clever, and I actually counted just over 1,000. And that, frustratingly, but thematically conveniently enough, is another damn metaphor, and probably the metaphor, and maybe the message. It's the fact that there's so much good stuff in life that we start to forget about it. Take it for granted until it fades into the background. We stop counting hearts, love, wins, and we look for everything else. But when we do seek it out, the good stuff, we get reminded of just how much there is. Like the fact that the most recognized symbol on Earth is one of love, not hate. That's kind of beautiful, right? So look, I am as cynical as the next modern human, but I don't know, having done this, I guess, does raise that question, doesn't it? How many more hearts do you reckon you'll see from now on?